Thank you for reminding me. All right, let's call this meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In our moment of silence here, I'd like for y'all to remember our board member, Bill Christie. He was in the hospital in intensive care. So hope your thoughts and prayers will be with him. Thank you. Have a seat. I do want to share something with you. I've been wanting to do this for a while. A good friend of mine finally found the book. I'd always heard that there was this book entitled All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. So, here I go. All I really need to know how to live, what to do, and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sand pile at Sunday school. These are the things I learned. Share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them, clean up your own mess, don't take things that aren't yours, say you're sorry when you hurt somebody, wash your hands before you eat, flush, warm cookies and milk are good for you, live a balanced life. Take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands and stick together. Be aware of wonder. Remember the little seed in the styrofoam cup. The roots go down, the plant goes up, and nobody knows how or why, but we're all like that. Hamsters, goldfish, white mice, even the little seed in the styrofoam cup. They all die, so do we. Everything you need to know is there somewhere. The golden rule in love and basic sanitation, ecology and politics, equality and sane living. Take any one of those items and extrapolate it in sophisticated adult terms and apply it to your family, or your work, or your government, or your world, and it holds true, clear and firm. Think what a better world it would be if we all had cookies and milk about 3 o'clock, lay down for a nap. Or if all governments had, as a basic policy, to put things back where they found them and to clean up their own mess. And it is still true, no matter how old you are. When you go out in the world, it's best to hold hands and stick together. All right. We've got some proclamations.
We have the ethics statement.
The ethics statements. In accordance with the Code of Ethics adopted by the Council, all council members have a duty to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner, free of conflicts of interest. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which will have a direct, substantial, readily identifiable financial impact for any council member, his or her family, or close business associates?
No.
No.
Does any council member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before this council today?
No.
There being none, all of the board members have a duty and obligation to vote. All right, now we'll proceed on.
So we'll have a proclamation to recognize Mr. Chris Sloan for his mesh certification. I'm going to ask Jamie Matthews to come up and award Mr. Sloan with his mesh certification.
So I guess some of you are wondering what MESH is. It's Manager of Environmental Safety and Health Programs. And, you know, every now and then we get employees within departments that go above and beyond, sort of like advanced law enforcement degrees. Well, Public Works sort of has those same recognitions for people's hard work. And so I'm just going to read you a little something that Chris has accomplished. And just so you know, it's taken about 3 years to attain this. And you go through a variety of schools, and it takes time and money. So we're very proud of him within the department. So he received this about a month ago. It says, Mr. Christopher M. Sloan, Town of Black Mountain Public Works, was recently notified by MESH Board of Directors that he had successfully completed the requirements and earned the Public Sector Manager of Environmental Safety and Health Certificate. The MESH certificate is awarded to individuals who demonstrate achievement through education in occupational safety, health, and the environment. MESH is sponsored by the Safety and Health Council of North Carolina, NC State University, and the North Carolina Department of Labor. We are tremendously happy to recognize Christopher as a recipient of the Public Sector Manager of Environmental Safety and Health Certificate, said North Carolina's Commissioner of Labor, Josh Dodson. This program prepares managers for keeping their work sites safe and healthy, and that preparations improve employee protection and company productivity. The MESH program is designed to increase the professionalism of environmental safety and health managers of commercial, residential, or governmental construction sites in North Carolina through a rigorous series of continuing education programs. The MESH program strives to recognize environmental managers and raise industry standards and increase the value of these practitioners to their employers and others to whom their services are provided. So I'd like to award Chris through MESH something it took him 3 years to earn. So.
Good work, Chris, good work. We have a proclamation, 2 proclamations. I will read them. The first one is the 5th anniversary of Love Corner. Whereas it's September 2023 marks the 5th anniversary of Love Corner, and whereas the group assembles faithfully each Wednesday at the corner of State Street and Montreat Road to wave and hold encouraging signs, and whereas Ruth Pittard began the tradition in 2018 to spread love and to encourage the community to engage in actions of love, and the town sincerely appreciates contributions for the betterment of the community. Whereas the Love Group has become a well-known and beloved source of joy for residents and visitors alike, and whereas the town joins Love Group in celebration of unity and remains committed to treating all people with fairness and respect. Now, therefore, do I, C. Michael Sobel, Mayor of the town of Black Mountain, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the 16th day of September 2023 as Love Day in the town of Black Mountain. Love Group is a valuable, positive asset to our community, and we thank the group for the dedication to spread love and compassion. Proclaim this 11th day of September 2023. Excuse me?
Maybe they could stand up, the members of the Love Group that are here.
If the Love Group members are here, please stand. I think they already knew that what they needed to know to learn in kindergarten. All right, the second proclamation of 9/11 Day of Remembrance, 22nd anniversary. Whereas in an unprovoked and senseless act of terrorism, 4 civilian aircraft were hijacked on September 11, 2001 and crashed in New York City, Pennsylvania, and the Pentagon, resulting in the momentous loss of innocent U.S. lives of all heritages. And whereas while we continue to recover from the loss of innocent lives, the spirit of the U.S. has been revitalized, giving way to expressions of patriotism. Whereas inspired by the heroism of our nation's public service personnel, military service members, and countless volunteers, our nation found unity and strength. And whereas from the tragedy of September 11th emerged a stronger nation, renewed by the spirit of national pride and a true love of country. And whereas Americans have fought back against terror by choosing to overcome evil by loving their neighbors as they would like to be loved, contributing to the relief efforts and volunteering their time to aid those in need. Now, therefore, it be resolved that we, the town council of the town of Black Mountain, do here proclaim September 11th, 2023 is the 22nd anniversary of the attacks of 9/11 and also the 9/11 National Day of Service and Remembrance in the town of Black Mountain, and urge citizens to recognize the heroism of firefighters, rescue and law enforcement personnel, military service members, and the many volunteers who responded to those tragic events with courage, selfless compassion, determination, and skill, to remember the victims and the innocent lives lost as a result of the tragic events on September 11, 2001. Proclaim this 11th day of September 2023. And as the last words in the, whatever I needed to know, I learned in kindergarten, we all need to stick together to hold this democracy together. Next, we've got citizen comment. Emily Hurd is first. Good evening. Please sit down and take the microphone. Remember, you got 3 minutes, and give your name and address.
Good evening, Town Council and citizens of Black Mountain. My name is Emily Hurd. Address 222 Fernway, and that's zip code 28711. I am here this evening to represent Christmount Assembly. I'm the Sustainability Director at Christmount in the Black Mountain area. And this is regarding a resolution to ban plastic bags and styrofoam in the Black Mountain area. So Christmount is a nonprofit organization that hosts thousands of tourists every year that stay at our conference center, that hike on our hiking trails. We also manage the water, waste, and roads for 90 homes in the area around Christmount. And we are sponsoring, along with other community partners, this resolution to ban plastic bags and styrofoam in the Black Mountain area. We believe in promoting environmental sustainability amongst our community, and we believe that it's imperative that government support community in making these changes to behavior and trying to reduce the amount of plastic and styrofoam that we're using. So we thank you for your support, and in return, Christmount would support the implementation of this resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anna Alsobrook. Again, you have 3 minutes. State your name and address.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me here. My name is Anna Alsobrook. I live at 31 and a half Greenlee Avenue. It's actually an Asheville address. I recently moved, but former Black Mountain citizen, resident, and I'm a member of the Plastic Free WNC group that's here. If you're here for plastics, can you stand up real quick? Cool, thank you. Thanks, everybody, great. So we've been studying this issue for over 4 years now, and studying it kind of from a trash perspective. We do a lot of river cleanups at Mountain True. I work with the French Broad River Keeper program, and we got to the point where it just felt like we weren't making a really big difference. There was just trash over trash over trash, and so we started looking into the issue more and discovered what a complex issue plastics is. It's more than trash. It's also related to climate. It's related to landfill space. It's pollution. It's environmental justice. It's a lot of things rolled into one. And we wanted to dig a little deeper and figure out what we could do to really stop that stuff from entering our waterways. And we researched ordinances all over the country. The first one actually was in 2007. And so that was 16 years ago. We learned a lot since then. And the proposal that we have introduced is the best model at getting plastic out of the river, out of our environment, out of our daily lives, as well as encouraging people to bring their own bags to the store with them every time they shop, regardless of the type of store. So I really appreciate y'all putting it on the agenda today. I'm excited to be here. I am a plastics nerd, so if there are any questions at any point, I can answer or email or chat later. So thank y'all again for this opportunity, and we're excited to push this forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Next one up is Linda Tate Sapal.
Good evening, Town Council. My name is Linda Tatsapal.
Tatsapal.
You're close. My address is 48 Beach Glen Drive, Black Mountain, North Carolina. I do live just outside the town border, but I do most of my personal business in Black Mountain. I consider myself a Black Mountain resident. I didn't draw the line. I would be if I could. And I am here also to request that the Town Council pass the proposed resolution opting into a ban on single-use plastics and styrofoam when Buncombe County passes one. I am part of the Plastic-Free WNC Task Force. I jumped on and joined when I understood what they were working on, so just decided it was the most important thing I could do right now. And I would say a couple of things. Anna says it way better than I do, but the evidence is really clear that disposed plastic bag and plastic is a really serious health issue, and environmental problem. We are consuming, science says, a credit card size worth of plastic every day, each one of us, out of the air, the land, the water, no matter where you are. And it's largely coming from plastic that breaks down into small bits, the microplastics, and contaminates our land, air, and water. And one of the worst offenders is those single-use plastic bags. In Buncombe County, we use over 137 million bags of those bags a year. And although there are recycling options, about 95% of that plastic is not recycled, and it ends up all over the place, including French Broad, including the Swananoa River. And we're really just starting to learn the health effects, but some of the science has found that plastic and styrofoam cause harm to people's liver, kidney, endocrine, reproductive, nervous, and circulatory systems. And when animals take them in, they can end up starving or suffocating. So we know these are problems. Ridding ourselves and the environment of these plastic bags is not going to save the environment on its own, but it's a significant step that we can take, and we can take now, and we can take in Black Mountain. It will also reduce litter. It will clean up the Swananoa River, Black Creek, Lake Tomahawk, and it's an easy step. It's something we can do now. It will make a difference, and so I ask you to pass this resolution tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Andrew Clark from the VFW Post.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Town Council. My name is Andrew Clark, Legislative Chair for the VFW Post in Black Mountain, 9157. I'm here today for the, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak here. It is both an honor and a solemn duty to speak for you today to honor the lives lost for the tragic event on September 11th, 2001. On this day, we come together not only as veterans, but as a community united in our shared commitment to never forget the profound impact those devastating attacks had on our nation. Now, 22 years later, still fresh on the minds of millions of Americans, 9/11 attacks, forever engraved in American history, just like that of Pearl Harbor attacks. Americans responded to the nation, call under an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies, foreign and domestic, every time with a rapid responsive power from air, land, and the seas, and a reminder to the enemy that disrupts the American way of life that's best described by the Yin Yang Twins' halftime lyrics, "Here we come to get you." Because the lyrics of Taylor Swift also tell us that haters are going to hate, but Toby Keith reminds our enemies where America is going to put a boot. Shall one ever choose not to be our friend and stop the American way of life? It's very simple. The American way of life is then, now, and until the end of time, for all Americans to participate in the rights and benefits paid for through the blood, sweat, and tears of America's heroes. To assist those that have been in harm's way defending America's freedom, the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States is a nonprofit veteran organization advocating for veterans for over 124 years, and in this town for 75 plus years. Our mission is to serve our veterans, the military, our communities, to advocate on behalf of all veterans. A few of our core values: always put the interests of our members first, treat donors as partners in our cause, promote patriotism, honor military service, ensure the care of veterans and their families. As an announcement, the VFW Post 9157 57 annual golf tournament is this Friday, September 15th. Stop by the Purple Heart Pub in person for details or online at purpleheartpub.org or by calling 828-669-2347. We encourage the town to continue to invest in veterans, emergency services, and essential workers that may defend and protect the American way of life. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Next up is Robin Stiles.
Good evening. I'm Robin Stiles. I live at 206 Central Avenue in Black Mountain, and I'm supporting the proposal to ban single-use plastics. The others have spoken ahead of me and taken most of what I was going to say, but I do have a couple of comments on that. I'm a member of Black Mountain Presbyterian Church, and in our faith tradition, we're called to take care of the earth and all its inhabitants. 114 of our church members have signed a petition to support a cleaner, less plastic-filled environment. Getting rid of these plastic bags seems a small step, but it is a step we can take without spending any of the town's money. Please vote to support the proposal and take another step toward making this the greenest little town in North Carolina.
Thank you. Next up is Judy Matter.
Hi, I'm Judy Maddox, chair of our local Sierra Club, Western North Carolina for 17 counties. I live in Leicester, and may I speak to everyone, or do you need me at the microphone?
Just at the microphone.
At the microphone, thank you. And I too am requesting that you follow with Buncombe County in the resolution for Black Mountain to join to ban single-use plastic bags at the checkout counter and styrofoam. And I want to give you some numbers. All right, so sampling has shown microplastics in 100% of water samples in the French Broad River, 100%. There's persistence of plastic carryout bags, you know this, littering environments, storm drains, becoming trees, entangled in trees, and in public areas. It's estimated, you heard this, that we use 137 million single-use plastic bags in 1 year in Buncombe County. That's us. Plastic bags cause operational problems at recycling process facilities, landfill transfer stations, and contribute litter throughout Western North Carolina. Kirby, our local recycling processor, has to hire additional staff and spends, guess what? $10,000 a month to clean out those plastic bags. Is that incredible? Over 10% of residential waste is those plastic bags. Plastics are made of a byproduct of hydrofracking, which includes fossil fuel extraction. Adoption of the proposed ordinance would, get this, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 83%. Does that even compute plastic and emissions? 83%. I want you to understand that estimated that plastic production in the next decade is expected to increase 40%. 40%. And it will make 20% of the global consumption of fossil fuel. So the oil companies have turned to plastic, is basically what's happening. So, Sierra Club, we are representing 463 of your people who live here in Black Mountain, and Black Mountain is gorgeous. I love to come here and watch your fireworks. So you guys are pretty special. We are asking all of us for you to opt into the ordinance with Buncombe County when it's passed, which will only deal with checkout counters plastic bags. It doesn't stop plastic bags in the produce. I mean, you know, that's a whole nother.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The last one is Reverend Bill Moore.
Good evening. I am Reverend Bill Moore. I live at 13 Loma Vista Court here in Black Mountain. I serve as pastor of First Christian Church Disciples of Christ here in Black Mountain. Our church is located at the intersection of Route 9 and Blue Ridge Road. We share our property with 6 species of fish found in the creek that runs along our property, as well as box turtles, rabbits, the occasional bear, red-tailed hawks, crows, as well as bees, moths, and butterflies who stop by our pollinator garden. These are some of our neighbors that we care about. We understand our efforts to take care of our piece of creation as part of our ministry to God and to our community. We do that by recycling, by installing solar panels and energy-efficient lighting, by planting a pollinator garden and decreasing chemicals used on our lawn. Some of these efforts have an economic benefit, but some cost us money. But all of them have a spiritual benefit because we believe that this is what our faith asks of us. In the New Testament letter to the Colossians, we read, "For in Christ all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. All things were created through him and for him." And so in our Christian worship and service, we want to care for all of these things. This morning I went for a bicycle ride out Old 70, heading east out of town. As I headed out, I began noticing the trash alongside of the road. Between Oli Guacamole's restaurant and Ridgecrest, I saw more than 3 dozen plastic bags and styrofoam cups, not to mention other trash discarded on the side of the road. Several years ago, I would have bemoaned how this trash spoiled our beautiful scenery. I still see it that way, but now I also see those discarded plastic bags through an additional lens, the negative health impacts this plastic trash has on all of us. Thanks to the work of Mountain True and other environmental organizations, I have learned how plastic breaks down and gets into our water sources. We then ingest those microscopic bits of plastic, which can cause all sorts of health problems. For these reasons and more, as a Christian, as a citizen of this community, as a fellow creature in this corner of the world, I support the resolution urging Buncombe County to ban single-use plastic bags and styrofoam takeout containers. Thank you.
Thank you. We had one more gentleman to sign up. Is it John Curry?
Yes. Yeah, my handwriting isn't great.
Okay.
I couldn't read it myself.
All right, you got 3 minutes, and give us your address, John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I live at 200 Tabernacle Drive, apartment D51 at Gibbons Highland Farms. And first thing I want to say is brag about Highland Farms. We have just changed over from plastic containers one way to, they're sort of cardboardy, but they're paper, so that when people come, lots of people there come in the evening for dinner, and they take home their dinner. And historically, we've had these plastic containers that, you know, just ended up in the landfill, and now we have these much more environmentally sound paper or cardboard type containers, which people are beginning to use. What I want to say is this resolution and the support of the county when they eventually adopt the ordinance is the beginning of going down the long road. We've got to substantially reduce the amount of plastic. Just look in this room, it's everywhere. And it's, of course, a lot of this stuff is what you would say one way, but eventually it's going to get in the landfill. There are lots of other uses of plastic everywhere in our environment, and they have the same adverse impacts that have already been mentioned. One statistic I would add, that I read about today is that worldwide, we generate, the petroleum industry generates 300 million tons of plastic. That's a big number. We've got to begin to reduce that number, not only because of the adverse effects of the product itself, but because, as has already been mentioned, the production of it adversely affects climate change, puts more carbon in the atmosphere, and the petroleum industry will keep right on making it if we don't begin to reduce the demand for not just gasoline, but plastic, and they're, of course, related in their means of production. So, thank you for the opportunity, and look forward to your adopting the resolution.
Thank you. I hope that somewhere along the line that we've learned something a little bit more than the Romans did. The Romans went the way of lead pipes. We're going the way of plastic, so we need to curb this. All right. All right, Josh.
You've got, next will be communications from staff, council, commissions, and agencies. We'll have our auditor's report, 2022 audit from Travis Keever from Gould Killian. Tammy, do you want to sit with him up there? And then Tammy Holland, our finance director, will accompany him.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Travis Keever with Gould Killian CPA Group. We've recently completed the fiscal year 2022 audit. Because the numbers are obviously a little bit outdated at this point, over a year old. I'm going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the numbers themselves, but more just the results of our audit. We issued an unmodified opinion on the June 30, 2022 financial statements. Unmodified opinion is also known as a clean opinion. That means we believe that your financial statements as presented and as issued are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We also issued a report on internal control over financial reporting. That is a requirement of governmental auditing that requires us to evaluate the internal controls that are most likely to impact the numbers on your financial statement. So we do this in a number of ways. We review documentary evidence, we conduct interviews with staff, we observe transactions as they occur, and throughout that evaluation, we reported 2 material weaknesses in internal control and 1 instance of material noncompliance. And I'll get to those in a little bit more detail in just a minute. We also were required to perform what's known as a single audit or a deep dive audit on your PAL bill funds, just due to the level of spending in FY22. We issued an unmodified opinion on compliance with the terms of that program. PAL bill is essentially a grant program from the state. So in our judgment, you all are complying with the terms of that program, and we also issued a clean opinion on your internal control of the compliance of that program. So the LGC started this a couple of years ago. They have something called Financial Performance Indicators of Concern. It's a benchmarking worksheet that auditors are required to complete when they submit the audit. If there's any financial performance indicators, they pop up in red on the sheet, and then we are now required to present them to the council at a public meeting. So we had 4 total financial performance indicators. 3 of them are the findings that I mentioned previously, the 2 material weaknesses in control and the 1 instance of material noncompliance. So go to the next slide. So I'll go through each one of those as we're required to do in a little bit of detail. And of course, we can take questions at the end if you all have any. So the first one, the audit was not submitted within 5 months and 1 day of fiscal year end. In this case, that'd be December 1st, 2022. That one's pretty cut and dry. If the audit's not turned in by December 1st, it's a financial performance indicator of concern. The material non-compliance finding that we noted, which is also one of these financial performance indicators, was excess expenditures, or expenditures in excess of appropriation. Those were specifically, we were overspent by about $107,000 in the police department, about $81,000 in the development services fund, about $235,000 in the water fund, and about $47,000 in the watershed restoration capital project fund. The next one is material audit adjustments or prior period adjustments. That's one of the material weakness findings that I mentioned earlier. That's essentially, this is our first year conducting the audit in a while. We were auditor for a little bit. You all had another firm come in and do it for 3 years, and then you re-engaged us in FY22. So that's essentially where we look at the financial statements as prepared last year. There were some errors in those financial statements which had to be corrected before we could perform the audit this year. You had construction and process balances or open capital projects that were misclassified between governmental and business type activities, which is the water and sewer fund, the amount of $1.8 million. We had the books omitted a debt proceeds cash account in the amount of $52,000 and a capital project fund in the amount of $479,000 was incorrectly reported as a non-major governmental fund, while the assets in that fund were reported and used in the water fund. So each one of those had to be corrected before we could move on with the FY22 audit, and they have been corrected. Good. And then the last financial performance indicator of concern were the bank accounts not being reconciled in a timely manner, which we also noted as a material weakness. I think the bank account reconciliation for the operating account had a few errors, and it was completed about 3 months after year end. I will say with that one, the town is going through a pretty significant software upgrade, as some of you may know, and that did slow that process down pretty considerably. And I think all indications are now, correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, but I think that's back on track and has been for a while now. Do we go to the next one? So I'll give just a couple of brief financial highlights. That's a pie chart kind of breaking down the revenues in the general fund. They're pretty standard when you compare them to other municipalities in the state, as in the big number there, the $4.8 million, that's your property taxes. That's the biggest chunk of revenue, 55% in this case. The significant change since last year, your sales and service amount is only $236,000. That was a lot bigger last year because you had your fire department service contract with Buncombe County included in there. Of course, that's being reported as required by the county in a separate fund that's no longer in the general fund. On the expenditure side of things, again, it's pretty standard. Public safety is the biggest chunk. It was an even bigger percentage last year because, again, that public safety not only includes the police department, fire department's not in there anymore. The next largest amounts are public works and sanitation, which are presented separately, but a lot of people kind of look at those together. Combined, that's about 31% of your expenditures. And then general government, the administrative functions, about 16%, and debt service is about $503,000, about 7% of your expenditures. This one is a summary of your historical fund balance over the last 4 years. You see a general upward trend. That speaks well to the financial health of the town. Fund balance is growing a little bit every year. Available fund balance, which is the gray shaded area, is the amount that you're statutorily allowed to spend in North Carolina. You take your regular fund balance, and there's some things the state says you're not allowed to spend on general operations, so you take those out. What's left is your available fund balance. That's a statutory calculation, and it's got a similar upward trend to overall fund balance. This next one is a graph. It's a available fund balance number I was talking about as a percentage of your net expenditures in the general fund. So the state and others use this as an evaluation of the fiscal health of the town. They basically say if you get into hard times, how much of 1 year's expenditures do you have available to spend at any one time? 8% would be 1 month. That's sort of looked at as the minimum. If the town gets below that, they're kind of looked upon by the folks at the state as maybe being in a little bit of financial stress. Black Mountain is at about 63%. And again, that number's also been trending upward, just like it has with the rest of the state. The red line is the municipal average in North Carolina. So you guys are, at least for FY22, tracking right with other municipalities in the state at 60% or a little bit more. And this is just some selected statistics from the town's biggest enterprise fund, the Water and Sewer Fund. Shows your working capital, unrestricted net position, which again are just measures of the fund's ability to meet its current obligations. The fund generated operating income during the year, $407,000. You had revenues of $2.3 million, that ticked up a little bit from last year. You generated $769,000 in cash flow from operating activities. That's important because you have to generate cash flow from operations to cover debt service and capital asset needs and things like that. And overall in that fund, cash increased by $169,000. So that is all I had. I don't know if Amy has anything to add to what I said, but we appreciate being able to serve as a town auditor, and I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any.
One thing that I wanted to ask about was on the long-term debt. Because it looks as though the long-term debt is comprised of some areas that are not just strictly loans that we have out. Can you define that a little bit closer there?
Get to the place where we're
Here, Sybil, would you mind letting us know what page you're looking at?
Well, this was on the outflow of resources. It was on page 18. Let's see if I got page 9.
Also, I think
Page 16, sorry.
Thank you.
16. Because it says that we have a long-term total outstanding of a little over $3 million, of which $513,873 is backed by the full faith and credit of the town. I would assume that is our loans basically against one of our buildings here.
Yeah, well, 513,873, if it's backed by the full faith and credit of the town, that's essentially a general obligation debt. The other type of debt would be installment type financing, where you're using a vehicle or a piece of equipment, something like that as collateral.
Okay.
So that's the difference in those.
But that's not broken down anywhere then?
It is actually, if you look on page 59, towards the bottom of page 59, there's a chart, changes in long-term liabilities. And it shows all the different kinds of long-term liabilities that the government has, not just debt. But you can see they're under governmental activities. You've got, and it breaks it up between governmental activities and business type activities. Business type is essentially the waterfront. You see business type activities in your financial statements. It's basically talking about the waterfront. Golf's in there too, but the numbers are comparatively small. So that breaks it down between installment purchases and revolving loans on the general government side, and then installment purchases and revolving loans on the business type side. It also gives the amount that's on the books for the town for participation in the state pension fund, retiree health care, things of that nature.
Just was trying to see if there was any corresponding you have this 3 million here, and I'm just
Yeah, I think
looking
if you-
quickly, and I just don't see where the 3 million is. What would I need to add up to
It'd
get
be
to the
the
3 million?
installment purchases and revolving loans for both of those categories should add up to that 3 million, if I'm doing the math right. In my head. Accountants don't do math well without calculating.
All right, so we get the governmental 75, and then the business 438, and then add that up to the 2368. That's,
Yeah, I think you got,
I mean, excuse me, 2373. That's
well,
June
yeah, so you gotta take the
2030.
installment purchase and revolving loan lines off both of those. So for governmental activities, you got $1,690,000 in installment purchases, 75,000 revolving loans. When you come down to business type, you got 825,000 in installment purchases and 438 revolving loans. You add those numbers together, that should get you pretty close.
Okay. Just, and the major reason for asking for that is just to see what we're obligated to in the future. You know, as we pay off fire trucks, as we pay off police cars, as we pay off buildings, that goes away.
Yes.
But it looks as though that we're in hock for these other year after year after year, that those are not gonna go away, that's gonna be something that's gonna be reoccurring each year.
Yeah, so those installment purchases are, of course, loans, and you can see in the decrease column how much those went down in FY '22. Those remaining obligations, the pension obligations and such, you'll never actually get a bill for those. Those are paid through contributions when you run payroll. Essentially make contributions into the state system through that. That will be repaid through increasing payroll contributions over time. That's how they whittle that down. I think in the last 10 or 15 years, that percentage is going, don't quote me on these percentages, but it's going to be kind of directionally correct. The town had to contribute somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 7% of employee salaries for the state pension maybe 15 years ago. Now it's what, 11 or 12%? It's up there.
Yeah, and plus our state, the retirees' health insurance also goes into that, because we're on the state health insurance plan. So ours is
So you guys are
close to 20. Yeah.
about 20% of every payroll. If your payroll's $1 million, you guys are giving $200,000 to the state just to fund these post-employment benefits.
So that's gonna continue.
Those will continue, yeah.
On page 57, there's also details about the installment loans and how much the notes are and how much.
And what the collateral is also.
Well, it's just the idea of just what we're having to pay, not so much how we are right now, because you're saying we're fairly well off right now, but just, you know, what we're gonna be obligated for in the future.
Yeah, and one thing I would mention right now, the debt that you all do have currently is relatively low interest because it was taken out in a low interest rate environment. Of course, the rates aren't like that anymore, so any debt, taken out from here on forward would be substantially more expensive. You got bank notes here at 3%, 2%, just looking at them, 1.6%, 1.8%. Those days are gone, at least for the foreseeable future. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this. Just because you got that back in 2021 doesn't mean you can get it again now as far as the rate goes.
On monthly reconciliations, was one of the material that you wanted to talk about, the material weakness. You've come across this. What advice could you give to us to make sure that this doesn't happen until you come in to do the audit?
The advice, so we look at the bank reconciliations. That's a pretty common internal control over cash. You get your bank statement and then you reconcile it to your books and find out what any differences are. That's a pretty common internal control. It's one that we looked at. The bank reconciliation wasn't completed. As I mentioned before, the reasons for that specifically, I think do justifiably relate to the new software implementation because Tammy can speak to this better than me, but there was some instances of having to work back and forth between old and new systems. That was necessary. Now, our recommendation that we wrote up in here was that the town should have a process in place to ensure those are completed by no later than the following month. That's the recommendation. So
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
So
so June
that's
first-
your recommendation.
Yeah.
But what's the procedure for that?
It's essentially just have a process in place. Either Tammy has someone complete the bank reconciliation and she reviews it, or Tammy completes it and someone else like Josh or someone
So
else.
a second party.
It's
We need,
essentially a
so what
second-
you're thinking, that we need a second party to review
Second
that?
party oversight accountability, yeah, that's,
And we
Okay.
have that.
so I think just Courtney,
Courtney does some of our review.
Okay.
How common is it for a municipality to have material weaknesses like this?
That's a hard question to answer. It's not uncommon, especially in situations where you're doing things like implementing a new software system. What you don't want to do is have those same weaknesses show up year after year after year. Right, so we, as I said, we did this audit. I think we were your auditor for 6 or 8 years, a pretty decent amount of time, from maybe like 2011 to 2019, somewhere in that time frame. And we rarely had any issues. When we did, they didn't show up a second year. So I think that's the key thing to focus on. Some things got noticed one year, as long as they get fixed, they won't show up the next year's report, and then everybody moves on like it doesn't happen. If you start seeing the same ones show up over time, then you've got local government commission in Raleigh, which is a little bit unique to North Carolina. They've got some expanded authority that a lot of states don't have a similar local government finance oversight board in place, and they can step in and ensure that those things get corrected. And that sounds scarier than it really is, but it makes everybody's life a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. So the recommendation is when they come up, deal with them in the years they come up, don't let them happen again. That's the big thing. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And this may be a question for Tammy or Josh, I'm not sure, but kind of digging in a little bit to a few of those material weaknesses. The overspending, was that?
It was due to the software conversion also, because we were having to work out of 2 systems, and our budget was still in our old system, and the payables were in the new one. So doing those budget amendments didn't happen right at the time, and so that's what I mentioned to Travis. I was like, we did them, and he's like, yeah, but it was after the point of them being spent in the system. So that's where that came in a lot. And that's hard for me to have those material weaknesses on there.
Sure.
But when it comes to the software conversion, there wasn't a whole lot we could do, because we were at the mercy of the new software company. You know, now it's bank recs too, because they were having to import the information, and then they had to sit with us and go through these things before we could ever complete bank reconciliations. So a lot of that had to do with timing and, you know, limited staff, and us trying to do the conversion plus do our normal activities, and it was a lot of work.
So you don't foresee that continuing to be an issue?
No. The bank recs are already done and out there for the, for the new audit.
And then for the being past the deadline, is that a similar situation? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Looking at that installment notes that I was just reading here, because the town square occurred on my watch and some of the others. The note for $2,100,000, you know, we've got 630 left for the acquisition and construction of town square. That was also construction of this building here. That needs to be in there because that was combined together. If that could be put in there, you know.
So Tammy, is the conversion complete and you're running smooth now?
Yeah, we're still working on a couple of the modules. There's a project accounting module that keeps track of all of our projects. The fixed assets, we're still working with them to get that information imported in. I think that's the 2 big items that we're waiting on, and we're just sort of working around that right now. They're trying to get people scheduled to do that, and we're working through this. But yeah, we are up and running, and everything is in the new system right now.
And you just have to do your regular job now instead of all of that
Well, I'm
other
still doing
too.
both, but.
Right, good, okay.
So for clarification, you're saying that basically a couple of things that you were cited for have already been fixed?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
There's one thing that was in the very last page there, next to the last line, of your audit wrap-up, where it says, in addition, governments are no longer required to disclose which governmental funds typically have been used to liquidate the liability for compensated absences. Can you decipher that for me? Last page, next to the last line.
Oh, okay, that's discussing a GASB standard that isn't actually implemented yet. It will be, I believe, next year. Yeah, it'll be implemented for FY '25, actually. It'll change the accounting around compensated absences. Right now, y'all have a liability on the books for paid time off that's been accrued by employees, because if they separate employment, you have to pay them out. The accounting on that's changing just a little bit. And that's just describing some of the changes. So currently, we say, there's a line in the footnotes that says governmental funds are typically used to liquidate the liability for compensated absences. In other words, when you pay someone out, you pay them out of the general operating fund. We pay out someone's compensated absences. There's a line in the footnotes that currently says that. When this new standard goes into effect, that line won't be there anymore. That's pretty much all it's saying. That line itself is pretty inconsequential. It's more the change in the reporting for compensated absences.
It was just in there.
It's just different.
That's why we're just asking.
Yeah.
Anybody got any other questions? Comments?
So Travis will be back probably you'll get to see his face again another month too, because we'll do
Okay.
23.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Move on to consent agenda, Josh.
All right, consent agenda will consist of 5 items this evening. Item A being adoption of minutes. Item B being a text amendment to add park facility and program user code of conduct. Items 5C, will be a call for public hearing for a conditional rezoning request for Montreat College. D is an addendum of interlocal collection agreement and appointment of the town tax collector. And then E, annual property tax settlement and order of collection. That'll be your consent agenda.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Yeah, a motion that we moved, that the town council approve the consent agenda, A through as presented.
Okay. Any discussion of any of the items? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it passes. Our second citizen comment. I don't think we have any.
Mr. Mayor, someone had emailed me. Does the council mind if I read this email comment out? She emailed it to me and Archie both.
For citizen comment.
Yes, it is for new business.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and town council members. I'm Jolie Atkins, a mom, local teacher, and dugout parent for my son's Owen Babe Ruth baseball team. I'm currently in the dugout with 12 8-year-olds from the Owen Sandlot Beasts team for a doubleheader, or I would be here tonight in person to ask that the town of Black Mountain add into its budget an allotment for new dugouts to be erected at all 4 of the baseball fields at our beloved Veterans Park. I'm so thankful for all the improvements that have already been made to our fields with the help from the town of Black Mountain, our Public Works Department, Parks and Rec, and local businesses who partnered with Owen Babe Ruth to reinvigorate the fields before the very successful 8U Division State All-Star Championships, which were hosted at Veterans Park in June. I can say from 7 baseball seasons worth of experience as a dugout mom that new dugouts are another improvement that are sorely needed. Last season, one of them had no door to keep foul balls from flying in for a while. Thankfully that is fixed now, but on field 3 the latch is missing to keep the door safely shut. On field 1 on the visitor side, the dugout bench has sunken in almost all the way to the ground. It's really hard to enforce dugout rules like no cleats on the seats. Benches are for bottoms when their bench is sitting on the ground and their knees are up in their chests. On Field 2's visitor side, the dugout ceiling is so low that an opening night last spring, I actually banged the top of my head on the low end of the dugout, just standing back up from helping our catcher put on all his equipment and get back on the field. There's no way my husband, who is a coach, can stand up in there. Field 3's home side is short and tight too. They're all a tight squeeze and they all are just worn plumb out. I realize they were designed for children, but these children need to have adults in there with them, helping keep them in batting line order, tying their shoes, helping them find their gloves, hats, etc. Plus, sometimes they just need a grown-up to be there to comfort them when they come in after hard play. Ideally, we will need larger dugouts with concrete pads, wider and longer, benches that are long enough to seat an entire team of players, bat holders that hold enough bats for every player. We're not asking for anything elaborate, just adequate. Thanks for your time and for your consideration. Gratefully, Jolie Atkins, Dugout Mom. That's it.
Okay.
All right, your next items will be.
No, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I think they're telling you.
Excuse me, didn't see you.
Good evening, my name is Larry Perlman, and most of the time I live at 203 North Park Lane in Black Mountain. But on Wednesdays from 5 to 6, I live at the corner of Montreal. You get the idea. And having been part of the Love Group, you probably don't recognize me without my leather hat or my straw hat, but 2 years or so after we started, I wrote this poem, wanted to share it with the council. It's called Why Do I Do It? Some people would think it was stupid. Some people would be embarrassed. Some would think it's pointless. So, why do it? It's nasty in the freezing rain and the icy winds and the humid heat. So why do it? Not getting paid, or advancing a career, or learning a new skill, so why do it? My shoulders ache, my feet get tired, my wrist gives out. So why do it? It's the smiles. I could say that it's the inner urge to share love, or that it's part of a larger project, or it's to make this a better community. All true, but that's not it. It's the smiles. Kid smiles, macho men smiles, hippie smiles, grandma smiles, Republican smiles, Democrat smiles, trucker smiles, pretty girl smiles, teenage smiles, white smiles, black smiles, brown smiles, doggy smiles. That's why I do it. I just love the smiles. Try it. You'll love it too.
Thank you. Josh?
All right, 7A and B and C are all public hearings, and I would ask council that we postpone these. We did not advertise for these in the paper. We snafu'd and did not make it to the paper, so if we have these tonight, they'll have to be redone. That being said, we need 10 days to advertise. Are you okay that I poll you later, or would you like to pick a date now for the special call meeting? If y'all
I would like to see the council meet as soon as possible to do these.
And we'll have to advertise it 10 days, which would be, if we do it tomorrow, can we do it the 25th of September, which is a Monday? That's 2 weeks from today, that'd be long.
And is there a time frame from the time that we go ahead and request it until the actual hearing?
It will depend on when the newspaper can actually publish too, so.
We're gonna have to probably poll you later.
Well, no, I mean that question though. I mean, is there a time frame that we have to meet the minimum
Yes, it's 10 days minimum.
for us to go ahead and,
We have to advertise for 10 days before we can have the hearing.
but from the time we have the hearing, I mean, from where we meet, it's gonna be 10 days until we meet, right?
That's correct.
Then what is the time frame from that that we have to wait until we actually have the hearing?
You don't. That's what we'll be doing on the 10th day.
Okay.
For the 11th day, that's correct. Yep.
So we don't need to call for another public hearing again?
No.
Okay, we've already called for it.
We've already called for it.
So
that's
now we're
correct.
just rescheduling.
So I will be in touch.
Okay.
tomorrow with some dates.
Okay, yeah.
But probably around the 25th. It's gonna depend on when we can get it to the paper, for the paper to run it. So that's what we'll have to wait on. So with that being said, all three of those are off, and we'll roll into unfinished business. That's okay. Which is 8A, recycling cart grant funding. Michelle, would you like to come up and say a few words about our project that we've been working on for a few months.
Yeah. Hello again. Some of you probably had saw the cards before the agenda meeting started. One was 96, one was 64. Just to report back a little bit of some of the things we discussed at the last agenda meeting. We did do a survey. There was 93 respondents. That information was given to you. It was pretty mixed, which is to be expected. A lot of people feeling strongly, or people feeling, indifferent or having concerns. And I spoke with Vincent from the Recycling Partnership, and he had informed us that we are still in our grant contract. If we were to offer multiple sizes, the only way we would fall out of our grant contract is giving people the option of not receiving a cart at all. With that being said, we will only receive grant funding, which is that $15, if we choose a 96-gallon cart. So for any carts that we end up purchasing that are smaller, so the 64-gallon, we would have to purchase those entirely on our own, and that's not, of course, including the $40,000 from the state grant. And I think that covers the general updates that you guys had from the last agenda meeting.
So just to clarify, if we can offer, to stay within the grant, we can offer all the sizes, and let's say 50% of the people choose 96 gallons, we can use grant funding for 50% of the carts, and the rest of them we're paying full price for.
Correct. And I know I got new pricing from Brittany from Toter. I did give that to Josh. And I did not ask for the 48-gallon, and if I remember correctly, it's because that smaller size is like $1 difference from the 64-gallon. But yeah, so if I remember correctly, the larger cart is closer to like the $62 range, and then the 64 is closer to the $51 range. Which then we'd have to pay full price for technically. And they did go down like 75 cents a unit since the last.
So the 64 gallon is $51.
Yes,
96 gallon is $62.
correct. And like change, but yes.
Okay. And when you were speaking about the grant there, so we can only offer Papa Bear and Mama Bear. We can't offer Baby Bear.
So I guess the answer to that is technically we can. It was not recommended. And, the 64, I feel like looking at the surveys too, a lot, and even the couple people who I talked to like right before the agenda meeting, people were saying, people feel mostly drawn to the 96 and the 64. Those seem to be the two that people are discussing more so than like that smaller can. Technically, if we offer a can of any size, we would still fall in the grant contract, to answer your question.
As we've heard from the folks talking about the plastics, when we don't go ahead and encourage people to do it, that makes it easy for them to do it, they don't do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm concerned about. We've got half of the citizens in this town here who don't need anything more than just a tub.
Yeah.
And because I've not talked to that many people, but some that just said, I just have to stop recycling, I'm not gonna do it. Now, that's not everybody, but there again, that's why I would just have mentioned before that I think the offering of a Papa Bear and a Mama Bear and a Baby Bear is the best way to try to get more people to recycle. And I think that's the goal that we have.
Yeah, I agree. The goal is ultimately to get more people to recycle, to capture a greater amount of volume of recyclables. Kirby is capable of taking more. They are constantly receiving grant. They just received, I think, this month grant funding to process more aluminum. So they're just doing a lot to be able to capture more as well. So that is the ultimate goal, alongside the goal to reduce the plastic blue bags. That is potentially the number one concern of it all right now, just because we're the last city in the county that offers the blue bags. And as someone had mentioned, Kirby has to manually rip those apart, and it's at least $10,000 a month. They have to stop all the machinery at least twice a day they said in a recent blog post, to rip the plastic bags out of the machinery. So both of those two goals, I agree with.
And this is a small sample size, right? 100 people.
Yeah,
filled out
it is a pretty
this survey.
small size, and of course, you know, with a survey, you're gonna get a lot of people who feel, you know, you're gonna get all the people who feel
Sure.
hardcore one way, hardcore another way, versus a lot of the people in the middle. And I did think there was good feedback, and overall, a lot of the concerns are obviously valid from residents. It seemed like the two concerns that jumped out to me is how often we pick up. That was a common comment, if you look through that survey, is bi-weekly pickup, which by us offering bi-weekly, that is why the recycling partnership in the state recommended the 96 gallon. Because if people are saying bi-weekly pickup is not enough, then the only solution to resolving that while keeping bi-weekly is to offer the bigger can. The only other concerns that really jumped out to me are people discussing the bears and the issue with the bears and what type of cans those are, and the Vincent and the state, Sandy, when we go to do education on this, if everything goes through, the top two things that we'll be pushing would be to stop using the blue bags, not to bag your recyclables, that is in line with the county, and then secondly, to make sure all of the recyclables are clean and don't have any odor as well. So they're gonna also help us push both of those things, because those seem to be, you know, the concerns the residents have too.
That's a heavy order to ask people.
Yeah, oh, I agree, yeah.
I mean, when you start looking at climate change, you're looking at a tremendous amount of energy to heat water, to clean out a peanut butter jar.
I mean, I don't
so
have the
that's-
reports on that, but that is what would have to get done just in general. I mean, those are the rules now, all across the state, things have to be clean already. That's already the rules the state and the county has, is all your recyclables need to be clean, and they don't have to be necessarily completely dry, but mostly dried out and rinsed out. They don't have to, like with that peanut butter jar, you don't need to have it completely cleaned out. Even like when I talked to Nancy at Kirby, it doesn't need to be 100% dried out, but most of it needs to be out. They just make that a really stern rule so people follow it best they can.
So, again, this is a small sample size, but I am struck by the fact that 50% of the people who took the time to take a recycling survey don't have any sort of recycling cart
Yes.
at the moment, and which means that they're using the plastic bags, the blue
Correct.
bags. One thing we'll be talking about later on the agenda is that resolution around plastic reduction and waste, and it seems like if we're pushing for it within our businesses, if we choose to do that, that we should be encouraging it within our recycling as well. I've spoken to pretty much anybody who's willing to talk to me about recycling over the last month, because this is just we've been talking about this for a month now, and I'm trying to get as many opinions as I can, and there seems to be wide support from the people that I'm speaking with for the toters and having town-sponsored bins, but less support for it being universally 96 gallon. So I'm glad to hear that we can still receive grant funding for some of the bins for those who choose 96 gallon, and we're not disqualified. And similar to last month, I still am in very much support of moving towards toters, but I am also in support of providing options, allowing people to choose what size.
So one of the reasons we considered this whole thing was safety and health of our staff, and the fact that these trucks can do the heavy lifting and so on. And I just can't visualize the efficiency of having a combination system where some people have the green bins they carry and some have the new toters. So, I mean, we have to get rid of the blue bags, there's no doubt about that, but in my opinion, we go universal with the toters. I'm warming up to the 96 size, because at first I was not a fan of that, just because of my own situation. And then I talked to, at least one person said to me, I bought personally on my own, bought a 64 and regretted it shortly thereafter, because he forgot about the cardboard. You know, frequently we get things delivered, and the advantage to this over the ones we carry is it can stay dry. If I put it out before I go to work and then it rains, it's all wet, right? So that's one reason I like these toters too. So I keep calling, I'm not sure I'm using the right words. The ones
It's
with the
like-
wheels are toters.
That's correct.
Toter is fine, that's the brand.
So the
but
little green boxes are bins.
Like bins.
All right,
yeah.
so just to be clear here, I'm supporting universal toters. And I'm personally leaning toward 96 gallon, but I can understand the point about having 2 sizes available. I really couldn't get behind having 3 sizes available. It's just too much complication.
I mean, I agree with the cardboard. I even put today, I weighed out the recyclables. I use a combination of recyclables in my home, and I took recyclables from our recycling pickup today. And I weighed them with my scale I brought from home, and I made them equal. And one of the pieces I put in there was a very large piece of cardboard that I personally had a very hard time getting in the 96 gallon bin. It did fit, but I had issues with
Right.
it. And that is, definitely, we haven't talked about, exactly what the ordinance or anything will say, but the one pro with going with the 96 is that we can say everything has to go in there, including your cardboard. And even the statement you said with offering 2 sizes, I do think that is fair. Offering more sizes is just more logistics, which we can problem solve, of course. But thank you for your comments as well.
Thank you for putting together the carts for people to try out today. I similarly have heard mixed things about should we all have 96 or should we have different sizes? I'm also on board with making the decision to purchase something that we have universal recycling carts. If we do 96 or a combination, I could be on board with either of those options. I did have a question come up that I think you've already answered, but I'm gonna ask it anyway just to make sure I know. If someone were to purchase their own wheeled and barred bin to put, sorry, not
Toter.
cart, bin, toter.
It's
or
really
whatever.
easy to confuse me, so don't. Be careful,
Okay.
yeah.
Lid,
Yeah.
bar, wheels, tall. Okay, we're seeing the same thing. If they purchase their own, maybe it's blue, so we know it's for recycling. Are they allowed to use that?
So I think the technical answer is no,
Okay.
purely because in line with our grant, everybody has to receive a cart. And, that can be whatever size, but
So we're not supposed to encourage people.
technically, we're not supposed to encourage people. I would probably tell them that can become a trash cart, or, that is something that I'm sure a lot of people have recycling carts right now that fit in those lines. In the survey, I think I asked, and it was honestly, it was a small percentage, but there are those
Yeah.
people who exist. And we can probably solve if.
Sure.
We even talked about, I threw out an idea of, people bringing those back and we can use those for another project. There was a concern about having drop off for recycling. Well, if people give us that, we could figure out something and have those bins and have those at drop off. There's solutions.
It can
we
be our
figure out.
compost bins.
Yeah, I think that was what I originally suggested, is using those for compost bins or something in the future. But technically, I think the answer is no to that.
Yeah, I think that is, sorry, just on that thought, I have one, I know that Josh has one, maybe other council members do. It's perfectly good, it's like 3 years old, I hate to throw it away, it'd be a huge waste, so there seems like we need to figure something out.
Are you talking about the recyclable toters, or are you talking about the toters that are used for trash?
The recycling toters. For trash, we haven't technically discussed any of that.
Yeah. I'm just asking about recycling, because I'm envisioning not only people that already have them, but if someone was like, well, I can choose between 96 or 64, I really don't like those options, I'm gonna buy my own 48 gallon. Are we gonna let them use it if it has all the other things?
I believe the answer is no, just because we are in lines with that grant. We have to give everybody, all households,
equal access to recycling at no cost to them is the general phrasing for that grant.
But when you look at the amount of money that would be spent, it's almost to the point where we don't really need the grant.
Yeah, and I mean, that is
And if we
something
don't
to
need the
consider.
grant, then we could accommodate the people that want to go ahead and have their own.
Yeah, and that is something to consider. I really don't know the cost between those two options off the top of my head of not having that grant funding. I will say, I think if we don't go with the grant funding, I don't know if we get the opportunity to apply and get grant funding through the, those organizations again for the same task.
Well, you just do a quick math on that, you got 1,000. Let's say that we ended up going with the 64s and then you end up in not the 92s. There's $15 difference, $11 difference between them. Well, 1,000 of those, that right there is that's a lot of money.
But I guess the thing too of offering people or letting people use their own, that is a pretty small percentage for people who have their own already versus the amount of people, like Doug said, even that survey was only 93 respondents, but a large chunk of them don't even have a solution. And if I remember correctly, I know we had talked about those lifting totes and kind of last agenda meeting went against them because they are not as safe for sanitation, they don't have a warranty. I think they ended up being the same price as the 64-gallon tote with no warranty. And so if we are looking to offer people another solution, I personally only see the toters being the solution, regardless of the size.
Could they return it?
Yeah, I mean,
like, if you didn't need it, if you were given it, could you?
that, I don't know.
Yes,
Pretty sure you
right?
can.
I mean,
If we give it to the household,
they don't
an email from Vincent, we give it to the household and they end up giving it back to us, it still counts as.
and then we
service.
have it. We have it for when one
We'll have it
breaks
for
or when somebody moves
another
from
house
town.
that moves in.
Yeah.
Correct. And yeah, if they returned it and needed, if they really wanted a different size, like let's say somebody with the 96-gallon, because there are definitely people who only then live in that house, only 2 people live in that house. They are like, no, I feel strongly that I want, a smaller cart. We can talk about switching that out, and toter is only an hour away in Statesville to accommodate something like that as well.
Now that we can continue to receive the grant funding, even if we offer smaller totes, it makes no sense for me not to move forward with the grant.
And the council's pleasure.
What are we actually looking for today?
So I guess what I need from you would be an affirmative vote that yes, you want to purchase recycling carts. And then probably secondly, what options do you want to offer? 2 sizes, 3 sizes, 1 size?
And how many of these are we looking at? 4,400?
4,750 is what's in here right now.
And that number can get pretty exact. I know that we just purchased clickers recently, so that number can get dialed in to exactly what we need.
We haven't really discussed how we're paying for it, right?
So, if you took the grant and bought 96-gallon toters for everybody, you're gonna have to pay $225,000. Okay? I think some of our conversations months ago, 'cause it's been a while, were using some of the remaining, what used to be ARPA funds, what we have left, which is about $450,000 that we never have appropriated at this point.
Yeah, and I guess if it helps the cause, it is a 12-year warranty. So, and they say that their carts last 20 years on average. So that at least helps with that. They will last a long time.
I'd say that's pretty optimistic.
I mean, the 12-year warranty is sound, so we would be getting all of those back if they were to be destroyed.
And in the interest of going ahead and thinking about, because it sounds like the board is pretty much set on offering a 96 or 64, or 92, 64?
96, 64, I know.
So, how is that going to be determined? I mean, if the board votes to go ahead and buy it, use the ARPA funds, and then they've got the containers, would you go ahead and send enclose a postcard, which I think would be one thing, in the water bill?
Yeah.
And say, please, check the box you want, and then send them back. As opposed to trying to order 2,000 and 2,700 of them. You know, to try to get some way to get an accurate number of what folks want.
We would definitely want to get an accurate number. We will only receive reimbursement for 96-gallon carts that are delivered to each house. So we would want to get, as close to that as we really can. So probably, the postcard element. Vincent at Recycling Partnership recommended, the smaller size being offered to people who are on, the backdoor stop or physically can't or, have those concerns. But I think the postcard would probably be easiest to mark off.
So if
So we-
someone,
Go ahead.
if someone didn't return a postcard, like default to 96 or?
Probably.
Yeah, I would say yes, just because then we would at least get, I think it would end up still being a little bit cheaper than the 64 then on our end with the grant. So I would say yes.
That's correct. So your 96s are $62 and you're gonna get $15 back in grants, so it's gonna end up being 40, or whatever that math is.
Well, it's
47.
$4. If someone gets the gets the 64 gallon, then we get no recycling, no grant money.
Correct.
So it's gonna cost us $4 more, is all.
That's right, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
So our default is the 96. And if somebody wants to opt for a 64, they could do it, but I'm just skeptical that we're gonna get a ton of postcards back.
I also think it very easily done. We could set up an online form as
Yeah.
well.
Mhm.
If the postcard may seem a little cumbersome to some folks, we could do like a two question form on our website. That would be another way to get after that information.
Which is good, assuming that the website would get to the people, but there
And
again,
do
it doesn't
postcards.
get.
Yeah, so we
it
would
would
do
be
both. Yeah.
I think the main
Only
thing is,
96 people fill out the survey.
Yeah, really.
at some point, you have to say, here's the deadline, and then this date, we're gonna quit picking up those. You can put it out, but we won't pick it up. And we won't pick up anything in blue bags. So it creates a deadline for folks to let us know what they want in the way of a cart.
So Councilmember Hay and I had a town hall last week and we talked about the recycling toters. And someone asked a really interesting question, which was if they wanted on their block to consensually pool recycling with their neighbors into a 96 toter, I get it, they're all gonna get them, I know, like everyone has to have it delivered to their house, but if they wanted to just put one out and everyone brings their stuff and throws it in the communal bucket, there's no problem with that, right?
No.
So if people if they wanna use their little handheld and take it out and dump it with their neighbor who doesn't mind.
That's
a
really,
good compromise.
that is really,
That's the best I can come up with. So-
That is a loophole that I think would end up being totally fine. Just because, it would end up still going in the bin, it's still going in the truck, and.
It's actually one less cart to have to.
Yeah, so I guess that, I trust that they would figure out that solution and, it would be all good. The only other comment I saw a lot too in the survey, which I guess I didn't address that I want to, is people just not having trust in our recycling system, which is not entirely our fault, that's really nationwide right now. And so hopefully a lot of this education will help, get people to feel that we are doing what we can and doing it correctly, especially if I'm overlooking it as well. But that is just a comment I saw pretty commonly in the survey.
Well, I want to thank you for the education that you're doing all over town and tonight, so thanks.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
One final comment. I would encourage us to look at, before we rolled these out, what the rules would be and have some additional discussions around that. I think the cardboard boxes are large and cumbersome depending on how big they are, and they might not fit in a cart, and I would hate to discourage people from recycling those because they don't fit in the cart. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And luckily, I kind of said this in the last agenda meeting. It's great that our sanitation is in-house, because something like that, okay, if you see the TV boxes, like, we can still grab those. Because some of those boxes are really, like, they make like over 70-inch TVs now. So some of those boxes would be difficult to even put in a 96-gallon cart. So definitely we can figure out the detailing for that.
I'd be curious to see if we could have some kind of, during staffed hours at Public Works, a place to drop off recycling that's not fitting.
Yes,
So
that
cardboard
is.
boxes. I also know we've got a lot of gardeners and farmers in the area. Cardboard boxes are a hot commodity
Yes.
when you are redoing your garden, so.
I would even, I'm just throwing out there, I know the county has at their transfer station, because that's where I go to drop everything off, they have a moving box shed, and you bring all your really big boxes there, and people can come and go and utilize that. That is an easy solution for the boxes.
We've got resources.
Yes.
I would move that we move forward with the recycling cart grant funding, accept the grant for the cart funding, and with the, amendment, I guess, that we offered various sizes, so.
64 and 96.
64 and 96, sure.
Okay. Gonna want to put any kind of deadline on when we begin this? I mean, so we do the survey so we know what to order?
I think that I can leave that up to staff, I guess.
Well, the water bills will go out, I just got mine today, so it'll be another month before those go out, but we will get some type of questionnaire, small, with a choice in the water bills, and then we'll also get something out digitally between now and then.
So on the postcards, it'll have their mailing address on it, so we know who we get it from, and then the online form would also have, if it gets duplicated for some reason. Yeah,
that's correct.
Great.
Any more discussion?
Sorry. I know we want to move on. I think this would apply to the rules that we were talking about around recycling, but I think that some people will be frustrated if they hear that they have a bear-proof recycling bin, and if they think that we're trying to take that away or prevent them from using it. And personally, I would like for us to figure out a way to allow people to continue using it if they have one that qualifies, to continue using that. So I guess if we're voting on this, I think I would like to ensure people that they have an option to return it.
And I would think that that's correct from what you said, that the grant funding is going to cover only those that are delivered 96 gallon.
Correct.
So if we only delivered 10 96, I'm just using this theory. If we only delivered 10 96 gallons, that means the other folks can do what they want to do.
So we have to deliver recycling carts to everybody.
Every address.
Every single address that's in our town
But they can take it and
limits.
turn it back in.
Correct. So when we go to give them that report with the state, we're gonna show them every single address we've given a cart to, and that it's every single address that gets serviced with our sanitation. And it'll be marked what size they got, and whatever is 96, that's how we're gonna get our money back. So I guess for the bear cart, I can of course talk with Vincent, I can talk with Sandy. They know that the bears are concerned, so we can figure out a solution with that.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
Think we need to vote?
Great.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're trying to get there. We're trying to get there. So we've gone ahead and had a motion.
Just touch base on.
We've got ahead.
You
You need to come up.
So, just sitting back listening, I just want to just let me know on a couple of things. One thing was the sharing it with the residents, and putting it in one car. That's fine on recycling because there's no limit on it. But what we run into with that, and we've run into in the past, is you take 2 or 3 houses and they put it at one residence. well, our sanitation guys end up leaving it because you got a 6-bag limit, and there's 20 bags of trash set out there.
Yes.
So we encourage people, if they're gonna do that, to leave a house number on it, or at least a note, or it'll get left, and then they're calling us to pick it up. And then, well, I just went blank on what my second one was, so hopefully it'll come to me, but that was one of the main.
But there won't be any bags with the recycling.
Yeah.
So it would be as long as it
That's right.
fit in,
No, I know that, but I'm just saying I don't want it to slip over to the trash side where they think they can
right.
Gotcha.
still put all of it at one residence. And
Yeah.
you're right, if there's no bags, then it shouldn't be a problem
Okay.
if we get rid of all of them, but that was one thing I had thought about that I may wanted to mention there. So if the other one comes back, I'll let you know, but.
Let's hurry and vote.
We will move in the direction of trying to get a vote now. Is everybody ready? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It's 4-0. All right. New business, Josh.
All right, 9A, Field of Honor Parade Ordinance. I will call on Jessica Trotman to come talk about this very briefly, very quick.
So the Field of Honor ordinance is something that has to be reviewed by DOT in order to shut down State Street for any kind of parade. We've done this for 2 other events, Veterans Day and Christmas Parade. We are not able to qualify for a special event permit through North Carolina Department of Transportation because it is an alternative evacuation route for I-40. And we have no capacity on our smaller roads to take the volume of I-40 and create a legitimate detour. And so the workaround is to create a local ordinance to close it on a regular reoccurring basis through a town rule. And that has been reviewed by NCDOT and is approved and we will not be using it this year, but it'll be in place for next year.
Mayor Sobel and Councilmember Patillo were in attendance today at the Field of Honor, and so that's what this will be next year in hopes. In subsequent years, there'll be a parade associated with that, is the hope.
This is not making it a town-sponsored parade. They still have to go through all the special permits and.
They will.
Well, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 0-23-19 as presented.
Okay, any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes. Thank you, Jessica.
9B, Art in the Afternoon lease, 1-year lease. This is a 1-year lease for Art in the Afternoon, which is housed up in the Carver Center on Carver Avenue. They are leasing approximately 2,500 square feet of space, known as the annex portion of that building. The lease is almost identical to last year's lease. The costs have not changed. She didn't request any changes, nor did I. So what you have before you is a lease in the amount of $1,000 per month for the next 12 months.
Do I hear a motion on this?
I move that we approve the lease as presented.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
9C, Single-Use Plastic Reduction Resolution. Not sure how much introduction you need from me on this one, but I've heard from a lot of folks in here this evening. I will say the town of Woodfin has passed this resolution, I think, last week. I will say the county has not adopted this resolution. The county does not have anything in place at this time. So at this point, I'll turn it over to our town attorney if he's got some comments, as well as whatever y'all like to discuss on that.
Well, I had a discussion with Josh when I became aware of this resolution just a few days ago, just to look at it. It is somewhat unique. Whenever you say another governmental entity can come in and enforce their ordinances within your jurisdiction. It doesn't happen all the time. So I started wondering about that. And looking at the statute that denotes that this body can adopt a resolution to allow a county to come into your jurisdiction and enforce ordinance. The way I read it is that the ordinance has to exist, and you can't just defer to your attorney to allow it to come in when it doesn't exist. I don't think that's legal. Because here's the thing, everything that was said tonight, the very laudable goals, certainly. The county hasn't adopted an ordinance. They may never adopt an ordinance. They may adopt an ordinance that at the end of the day may make no sense to you, may impose sanctions that may be questionable to you, may do something that you may go, well, that doesn't seem right for the residents of our town. And you have already sort of opened a door through this resolution to allow that to happen. That's why I don't think it's legal that the cart and the horse here has to be an ordinance is adopted. You review that ordinance, you say that ordinance is worthy to be administered in our town, and then by resolution, you allow that ordinance to come in. And so right now, paragraph 1 of the now therefore, I don't think is legal. Now, it seems to me that the other things are not necessarily tied to paragraph 1. The other things are a statement of encouragement to businesses, and as well as that this government shall endeavor to reduce the use of plastics. All that is sort of separate and laudable, and I think something you can do. But for purposes of this resolution, item 1 in the now therefore is something I don't think you can do. I don't know why Woodfin did whatever this form is. I haven't spoken to anybody from Woodfin, but I see it as a concern to adopt it in its present form.
Okay. So,
Can I comment?
No, right now, let us discuss.
Okay.
Thank you.
so I couldn't be more supportive of this whole concept and this whole goal. I mean, I just couldn't be. I looked it up. In 2014, I wrote a letter to the Black Mountain News. It was in the paper. It got published about this exact thing, you know, so it's been on my mind for quite some time. And I would love to see us do something to show support for this cause. And I'm wondering if we were to delete that number 1 and vote to approve it as amended.
Sure. You delete number 1 and substitute that this board directs Buncombe County to consider the adoption of an ordinance that accomplishes this.
Yeah.
As a sign of encouragement to them to do it. Quite frankly, I was saying to Josh, the legality of it, a lot of things are dealt with at the state level, that it's up to the state to decide. I'm not sure whether this one thing is something that the local governments can decide one way or another, but that is something we don't anticipate, because we're talking about Buncombe County. And of course, Buncombe County's landfill, Buncombe County is the one that would need to take the lead. So it seems to me that you would substitute 1 with that this body directs or encourages Buncombe County to investigate and look to adopt an ordinance that deals with this topic.
Have you written this down, Savannah?
Yes.
So I had a concern as well. Let's say Buncombe County does move forward with something, and then we would are you suggesting then that we would come back at that point and either vote to cooperate with that?
Sure, that would be the horse, that you would have an ordinance in front of you, that you can then review and see what it says, see what the sanctions might be.
Yeah.
Because the sanctions are concerning.
Sure.
If I'm walking down the street and I've come from Arizona and I have a plastic bottle in my hand, to what level is this administered and enforced? I just don't know. But again, it's not something we have to debate today. But I do recommend either deleting one in its entirety or amending it some way to get at what you need to get at.
Well, I don't see how Black Mountain could do it on its own. I really, I mean, not to pick on Ingalls, but to me, it has to be a more regional effort. You can't just say the Black Mountain Ingalls can't do this, but people just drive to Swannanoa, right? I mean, that's just not fair. And so I see every reason why this needs to be a Buncombe County effort. I would like for them to know that we are supportive in some fashion if we can see what they, if they pass something that we would like to consider it. The other part of this that concerns me is when you're talking about small businesses and small restaurants and telling them they can't use styrofoam and plastic utensils and whatnot. I mean, I want to get rid of it all tomorrow, but I also understand that that would be a real expensive transition for them to make, and we need to have, if it ever comes to pass, and I don't know if it ever will, but there needs to be a significant transition time allowed for these businesses to factor this new cost into their business plan. It might not hurt a big company so much, but these little restaurants we have, it'd be a big transition cost for them. And I want to just be real sensitive to them too before we start, do this, do that. It'd be hard for some of them.
I have a few comments. I had starred the number one because that stood out to me as well as it felt odd to say that we will approve something that we haven't seen yet. Mountain True, I believe, has drafted an ordinance for the county to consider, and I think the assumption maybe by Woodfin was that that would be the ordinance that was adopted, but that's not what this language says. And it does give me pause as well to think that we would just blanketly be accepting whatever the county went with. But so what I was going to recommend is that we approve the resolution, but amend that number one to say something about, within a month of the county adopting, we would review that and vote on it again, or just some sort of language like that. That I don't know if that would be more in line with what you're talking about or not. I don't know. maybe that gives you pause as well. But basically saying that passing that this is a direction we would like to go as a town, and saying that should the county move forward, we will immediately take that up as a council, and to again encourage the county to do that. So that's one comment. The second one is that I appreciate what Councilmember King is saying about the small businesses. I did have a chance to review this with the chamber board last week, and they discussed it and at length and shared some concerns around additional costs to small businesses, but unanimously or overwhelmingly supported moving forward with a resolution like this, as long as there was a grace period, as long as there was a transition time. One concern that was raised is that many of the businesses have bulk purchased a lot of their bags and a lot of their single-use silverware, that type of thing, and would want to be able to use through that before purchasing additional. And so I think as long as that was built within the ordinance, and I believe that the version that Mountain True put together did have some language around that. But again, we would be at mercy of what the county did if we were to move forward with this resolution here. Then I'm fully in support of that. I also want to give a shout out to Mountain True because this was the issue that we got by far the most emails on. I think pickleball was in the lead before this, and we got hundreds of emails maybe from residents on this issue. So good job with the organization.
Which doesn't mean pickleball needs to.
No.
It's not a contest. We're not. Yeah, right. No, we're good.
Would you like staff to put something together based on this conversation and bring it back, or do you want to pass this tonight?
I'm wondering if we can invite Anna Alsobrook up to share a little bit about what conversations are happening around supporting small businesses, implementation, schedule. Is that acceptable?
If you'd like to come up.
Thank you, Councilmember Berry. Yeah, so we have been working on this for a long time. And a couple things I wanted to mention. One is what we're trying to shy away from in this conversation is kind of what happened with the mask mandate. We don't want the town of Black Mountain to do one thing, the city of Asheville to do something else, Weaverville does its own thing. That's really confusing for businesses as well as residents. So this proposal that we brought to y'all was Buncombe County will pass an ordinance, and we're hoping the small towns will opt in. And that kind of blanket covers, the Mass area where most of our metropolitan people live and shop and dine. On top of that, the proposed ordinance that we brought to Buncombe County does include a grace period of 6 to 12 months. And that period of time is for a few things. One, it's for us to educate businesses on what the transition looks like and how it may impact them. It gives them time to go through their existing stocks of supplies as well as source alternative materials. And it allows us to do quite a big reusable bag distribution aimed at people who may not be able to afford those bags going forward. On top of that, we have compiled a pretty exhaustive resource list for businesses, small mom and pop stores who may have a harder time moving from, styrofoam clamshells to at this point, plastic is a viable option, so either a plastic option or a cardboard option. We're hoping to get price lists available for folks. We're not a distributor, we're not a business in this realm, so our purchasing power and ability to get quotes is somewhat limited, but we do hope to work with people who are in the industry to get more pointed pricing. That being said, in terms of the legality of everything, we have shown all of our legal analysis to several lawyers. The City of Asheville attorney agrees with our legal analysis. Town of Woodfin's attorney also agrees with it too. I am all for an amendment saying Black Mountain encourages Buncombe County to opt in a single-use plastic reduction ordinance. Changing the language is great. I do really encourage you all to vote for something because it shows a move of strength in numbers, and the more small towns we can have vote for this, it shows Buncombe County that the time is now to act. So if there's other questions, I'm happy to answer. But those were the things I wanted to
Well, I think
comment on.
what you said there is that this would help the commissioners. When they look at Black Mountain, they see that there's the resolve here for it.
Exactly.
And I think that's really all the resolution ought to be, is just simply the resolve to revisit this once the county passes something.
A statement of support.
I just think that's all it needs to be.
So I'm wondering if we're able to do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else had questions, but.
I don't know. I think, I don't have a question. I'm good. Just a statement, I'm good. Just a, I'm more in agreement with our town attorney and the rewriting of number 1. I would feel comfortable with that. I do not feel comfortable with it written as is.
So I'm wondering if we're able to do that here and now, or do we need to wait and have amendments made and represented at another meeting?
Can we put this on the agenda then when we're going to be looking at the
Special call?
the special call?
Yeah, absolutely can. We'll note it,
How
we'll
about
put it in the
that?
notice.
That sounds all right.
Is there anything preventing us from doing it now? I mean, just hammering out the language, but like.
No, I think we could do it now and just make sure that the language is changed.
So something like the town of Black Mountain supports an ordinance reducing single-use plastics be adopted by Buncombe County and subsequent ordinance considered within the town of Black Mountain at such a time, la 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 la.
Well, it's a resolution, is the vehicle for Black Mountain. If you're talking about subsequent ordinance, meaning our ordinance. It's
Yeah.
just a resolution, which is really an odd vehicle for the General Assembly to suggest that we allow ordinances to come in via resolution. A resolution has no formality
Right.
to it. You don't have to, you can only put it on an agenda. You don't have to notice. That is an odd duck.
I meant the resolution that then we would consider the ordinance that they have put forth, not committing us to the ordinance that they've put forth.
Yeah,
So maybe my
your
language.
first part was perfectly fine, that you said. And that really is all you really get to it. Do you have what you said in terms of first part?
I have it written down, so.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I marked it up while we're talking, so.
Say it again.
You said the first part again?
The town of the town of Black Mountain supports an ordinance reducing single-use plastics be adopted by Buncombe County. And
You could just stop right there.
Okay.
Because at that moment in time, if they do so adopt it, you'll be able to come back in here and adopt a resolution, once you see it. So that's what I heard the lady say. She just wanted you to support them to adopt something.
Everybody on board? Doug,
Okay, thanks.
you on board with that?
Yes.
All right. Do we have a motion to that effect?
I move that we adopt the resolution as amended.
Okay, any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes. All right, Josh.
All right,
We need to start our last thing.
Lastly, on at least the order of business is 9D Veterans Park Baseball Dugout renovations. I talked to you briefly about this in our agenda meeting. At this point in time, we've got really just kind of a ballpark idea of what this is gonna cost. We got an estimate.
That's good fun.
Yeah, it is, isn't
Isn't
it? So it's around $70,000. If council decides they want to move forward with this, we will of course get the proper amount of quotes. And then I'm happy to let you know what it's gonna look like.
How many dugouts are we talking about?
Four.
6, 8, sorry, 8.
Eight.
Four
Eight.
fields.
Four fields, 8 dugouts,
So it's 8 dugouts
Foul
for
netting.
approximately $70,000.
foul ball netting,
Netting and some
and
fence.
the fencing
Fencing
for foul ball backsides.
and the roof over the.
Right. So, they're playing ball right now.
They are.
So when could you start construction? Like, you'd have to wait till this season's over?
We would.
When is that?
Well, we probably is going to try to do construction sometime in off-season, which would be
Yeah.
winter. But
Yeah.
we'll have to just play it by ear on concrete. It gets too cold, it won't cure, so. But
So-
it would be ready by spring, we would hope. Right?
Yeah.
That would be the goal.
It's just not super urgent tonight, is what I'm getting at. You just want to know that we're supportive of you getting the bids. but-
Yes,
But,
just that this is something that y'all want me to spend some time on, move forward with.
yeah. Well, I'm supportive of it. I think we need them.
Agreed.
Yeah, each field is, the dugouts are in different conditions. Some of them are in much poorer condition, and then also the backdrop fencing. Some of them have overhangs, for foul balls. Some of them are not much more than a 16-foot fence probably, and I think it makes a lot of sense for us, for safety and for
And there's-
enjoyment.
And there's also foul ball netting, and the poles are already there, but the netting's gone.
We'll start moving forward.
Great. Do you need a vote?
Communication, I don't need a vote, I got consensus, we're good.
You probably have seen this, maybe you've seen it in the paper. I know Brian reported that at the last meeting, is that there's not a lot of things occurring at the General Assembly because of the quagmire of the budget and specifically gambling and casinos have gummed everything up. And so nothing is moving in the halls in terms of wall. So I'm not aware of any legislation of a municipal nature getting through the gauntlet because of this quagmire. I understand that we're looking at the latter part of this week and next week for things to start opening up. And obviously they're contemplating the budget sometime this month. So hopefully by the next meeting, I'll be able to tell you whether or not there's anything new and exciting out there in the municipal realm. Right now, everything's just still gummed up.
And for me, I'm gonna brag on my employees. We are fully staffed almost, right at it. Most departments are fully staffed. We haven't been this full staff since before COVID. So, yeah, we've came back. It's taken us a while, but we got everybody back now almost. So.
Pay study implementation pays off evidently.
We had some. But that's it for me.
Well, that's great news.
Okay, I don't have anything. Does any town council want to make a comment?
I had one thing I wanted to mention. Our fire department brought it to our attention that September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And they've made the effort to promote the awareness and even a fundraising aspect to it. Evidently, if you look at the fire hydrant on the corner of Cherry Street and State Street, it's currently painted gold because that's the color for this month. And because they picked gold because children are more precious than gold. So evidently on this fire hydrant is a QR code. And if you're so inclined, you can use that QR code to make a donation to prevent childhood cancer. So thank you to our fire department for making that happen.
Anybody else?
Josh, a couple updates that I'm hoping you could share at the town hall, which I appreciate your attendance on last week. There were some questions around the progress on Cragmont and the pickleball courts, so if you could share an update on that. And then also, leaves aren't falling yet, but we're not too far away from that. And,
that's correct.
And one of the initiatives that we put into this year's budget is leaf pickup, non-bag leaf pickup.
That's correct.
Right, so if you could touch on that as well.
So sure, I'll start with that one. So the leaf pickup, we're gonna start in October. So for those that are listening or here, do not bag your leaves. We're gonna suck them up for you. Get them out to the curb. We will be pushing out information soon, probably starting this week about that. It'll go in water bills, we'll push it out on the website. Just remember, if you see somebody bagging their leaves, tell them what to bag and we're gonna suck them up for them, okay? So that's what we're gonna do. Starting in October, it's gonna run till January, is that right? The Cragmont Park, we are working with a landscape architect now who has already begun his drawings on the park. He's doing some touch-ups and we hope to meet with him later this week to look at that. And then I'm gonna bring some other folks in. I know the pickleball folks wanted to see what it looks like. I'm happy to share it with everybody on this board as well. So that is moving along. I'm waiting on him to get it drawn so we can figure out the right placement for things. And then finally, you mentioned pickleball courts. So I mentioned Cragmont Park plan first. We need to get the plan done first in order to put the pickleball courts in. But our hope is to get the pickleball courts in over this winter is our goal. And have all that done by next spring is the goal.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, I'd like to get a motion that we enter into a closed session to consult with an attorney on North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3.
So
make the motion, okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, before we go in, I want to take a 5-minute break.